After last week's review, I wanted to go back to bland, basic, mediocre rom-coms. And lo and behold, my memory presented me with this gem. Prince and Me franchise has 4 films within it. The presence of a sequel surprised 10-year-old Poe back in the day, but to find out that there were 3 sequels? I'm shook. This movie premiered April 2nd, 2004, as a pretty crummy April Fool's joke, and was directed by Martha Coolidge, who also directed An American Girl, Chrissy Stands Strong, and Material Girls. It stars Julia Stiles from 10 Things I Hate About You and The Last Dance, and Luke Mulvey from The Prince and Me Too and 28 Days Later. The synopsis is just about as bland as the actual film, so let's get this over with. Paige Morgan is a focused pre-med student who becomes intrigued by Eddie, a wealthy Danish student. Despite Eddie's initially boorish behavior, Paige falls for him, only to discover that his father and mother are the king and queen of Denmark, and he is the heir apparent to the throne. As Eddie adjusts to the American life, and Paige gets used to her beau being a future king, the two must decide if their romance is something that can last. This feels like it would be a lot to go through, so let's get started. After the opening credits, we're introduced to our 2 protagonists. Paige is a down-to-earth country girl pre-med student who just wanted to get into a program at Johns Hopkins after graduation. Eddie here is, well, royalty, but he's like the snooty douchebag type of royalty. While Paige races to get to one of her hometown best friend's weddings, Eddie here is just racing because why the fuck not? He seems to be a bit ticked off when the other guy loses the race on purpose. I guess he likes when only some things are handed to him on a silver platter. Later, Paige moves back to her dorm to prepare for the next semester of college that starts in like a week, and Eddie completely embarrasses himself and his father at some important government meeting by zoning out and doodling.
Edvard, I'm sure we'd all like to know what you think.
Sorry, what was the question?
After the drama queen crawls back to his suite, he gets the best idea from an unsavory commercial.
Now Desperate Dan takes you to America's heartland to bring you wild college girls! The girls of Wisconsin!
Why not escape to an American college where women are loose and nobody knows he's royalty? When he brings up the plan to his parents, his mother is immediately against the whole thing. She points out that he's just going to embarrass the family name again. She's not wrong. And then try to escape the backlash by hiding in the castle. She has a point, I think. Eddie throws a tantrum and says he's going to do it anyway, and his father just gives up and tells his mother to let him go. She concedes, but only after telling Soren here that he has to go with her dumbass son.
You will go with him.
Your Majesty? On my own?
Absolutely thrilled. I guess it doesn't take much for some rich prince to get into a college at the last minute, because here he is moving into a dorm and nearly hitting Paige. Well, I guess the driver nearly hit her, but like whatever. And after meeting the slobbish roommate, Eddie and Soren head out to woo some women. Mostly Eddie. Soren just is there to play babysitter and damage control. While trying to get some drinks, Eddie meets our dear Paige as she works her bartending job. He tries to flirt and it doesn't go great.
You know, if we were in Germany right now, we'd be underground.
What?
Rust gathering means basement.
But it's endearing in an awkward sort of way. Then he fucking ruins it.
So, will you take your top off for me?
What?
This is why you can't trust everything you see on TV, my dude. The next day, we meet with Paige at her 5-hour lab that she's been complaining about. And who should walk in but our confused little Princey Pooh, Eddie. Clearly making a name for himself here, and it's not flattering because this is a rom-com. Paige gets stuck with his royal assness as a lab partner, and he's honestly useless. He doesn't even show up for their next class, which makes it very hard for Paige to do well. Rightfully ticked off, Paige barges into Eddie's dorm to confront him, and he doesn't seem to get the message. After she leaves, Soren breaks the news to Eddie Boy that the money he came with is all gone, and they're broke now.
Do enjoy the eggs, sir. They were purchased with the last of your money.
Yes, we have some left, don't we?
What you came with is gone.
I guess Eddie's little tantrum back at home about how he'll do it with or without his parents' money, coming back to bite him in the ass. So now he's got to get a job. Can you guess where at? If you guessed the place Paige works, then ding ding ding, you're a winner. Obviously, he's trash. He's trash at everything. And eventually, skipping a lot of content, the two agree to a truce. Paige needs help in her bullshit gen ed class on Shakespeare.
Yeah, okay, I need help.
Yes, I'll help you. It's not a problem.
And Eddie needs help on how to be an average person, like doing laundry and stuff. Back in Denmark, the king isn't doing so hot, and the press is getting bored of no crazy Eddie running around. I guess it's been a couple of months because it's time for the students to go back home for Thanksgiving. Eddie was going to stay on campus with Soren, but when Paige's roommate becomes a little too chummy with Eddie, Paige offers for him to come back home with her instead.
Maybe you wanted to spend Thanksgiving with me and my family.
Now poor baby Soren is left alone to his own devices.
What am I going to do here for 5 days?
I don't know, just sightsee, relax. Soren, you'll be fine, okay?
Off to the farm we go. Since Eddie is so intimidated by all the normalcy, he tries his best to help out and blend in. Doesn't go great, but A for effort, man. Apparently the town has this big festival type thing where Paige's brothers are going to race mowers against their sworn enemy. Since Eddie's a big racer, he offers to help out, and due to some shenanigans, ends up driving the mower himself and wins. He's pretty proud because, like, this is a legitimate win and not someone falling back because he's a somebody. The losers of the race ain't too happy to be one up by Paige's brothers and some foreigner, so they end up brawling.
I'm going to kick your ass.
Just try.
This must be just so hot because later Paige and Eddie end up making out in her family's barn. Well, I guess like he also won her family over and he made reasonable improvements in his attitude, so break doesn't last forever. And while studying, the new couple decides to sneak off into the stacks. I guess the library has a secluded section that's famous for hookups. Unfortunately, the paparazzi is finally caught up with Prince Edward here, and at the news of his station and the fact that she's going to be blasted in newspapers all over the world.
What the hell was that? Why were they calling you Prince Edward?
That's my name.
Are there a lot of princes where you're from, or are you kind of it?
I'm it.
Just a bit too much for Paige, so she breaks off the relationship. One sad montage later, and Paige is giving her presentation in her dumb gen ed when she has the epiphany that she's in love with Eddie. She races off to her dorm to find a romantic note from her prince and decides that she's gotta get her ass to Denmark. Lucky for Paige, when she arrives in Denmark, there's some big parade going on, and her man is riding in it. Good thing, too, because how else would she have been able to get in touch with him? Phone? No, sir. Eddie notices Paige in the crowd and rides off with her to his parents' house.
Oh, no.
What?
You didn't tell me you lived with your parents.
Nice setup they got there. And let's just say the mother isn't too happy about her son falling in love with an American. Edward, in turn, threatens to step down as heir, which would either leave his 12-year-old sister as queen or his distant cousin that doesn't seem competent.
Oh no, I'm forgetting about Nestor. Cousin Bartholomew's idiot son Nestor, the 47-year-old virgin in diapers.
His father puts an end to the fighting, proclaiming that Edward will be king and he's free to marry whoever he wants. It's probably because he's close to death himself, but whatever. We love a supportive parent. Now it is time for Mother Dearest to make Paige into a respectable lady and not an embarrassment to the crown. Now about another montage later of Paige not really being ladylike and not living up to the queen's expectations.
I was just being nice to some kids.
That you did it in a new state-of-the-art, government-funded, billion-kroner hospital, which suddenly all these newspapers have no interest in mentioning.
She can't even be nice to children without messing up, I guess. Prince Edward has to run some big meeting between the national unions and the government or something. The same type of meeting that he was zoning out in a few months prior. But this time he has Paige and totally solves all the country's problems. I think Yay. What's more important, though, is that we get a ball scene. And can someone tell me why this dress Paige is wearing looks familiar? It doesn't matter because Mommy Dearest has finally gotten her head out of her ass and accepted Paige somewhat.
So, my dear, what would you like to wear to the coronation ball?
Everything is going great until Paige thinks she's figured out that she's not good enough to be queen or something.
Eddie, this has all been extraordinary. A real-life fairy tale. But I can't do it anymore.
We needed a final conflict in the story, I guess. Edward ascends the throne and is now king. Paige goes back home where she graduates. It's a kind of okay ending until Eddie shows his handsome face up, proclaims that his love for Paige, no matter what, and everything is okay again. Kiss and end. This movie was rough for me to get through. About 20 minutes in, I was hoping there was some way that I could just absorb the movie through osmosis. But let's go through the good stuff before I tear down the film. The actors were pretty good. I've always loved Julia Stiles ever since I saw Save the Last Dance. And Luke has here is also pretty good, I guess. The sets were pretty, and I loved all the detail on Denmark portions of the movie. The costumes were simple but pretty as well, especially that familiar looking dress. And I loved Soren. He was left alone for 5 days and he became a video game addict. I love him so much. But again, I could easily tear this movie apart. While the actors were a great choice, the acting, not so much. It just seems to me like Julia was putting in a minimal effort most of the time.
I can't believe you got. Oh, I hate you guys!
And that made me sad because I know she can be great. Some of the side characters, like all of Paige's friends, were also as bland as cardboard. There was no chemistry between any of them.
When she starts to talk about her life plan, it makes me feel so unfocused.
Tell me, I'm a senior, and I've changed my major like 6 times.
I don't even have a major!
The whole storyline reads like a self-insert fan fiction, if that makes sense. It must have given every tween girl at the time the fodder to build their own Cinderella-esque romance in their head, and that's great, but maybe give a little bit of substance for the older audience. There's nothing wrong with things having a target audience of young girls, but I think they deserve better too. I feel like the final conflict came out of nowhere. There wasn't enough build up to Paige suddenly leaving Eddie like that. Maybe if there were 2 separate films, like one for the American portion and one for the portion in Denmark, there would have been more time to build the tension that it needed. But there was like 20 minutes from the point that Paige landed in Denmark to the time she left. Overall, I'd give The Prince and Me like 5 out of 10. I guess I just remember it being better when I was a kid. No. I know I thought it was better when I was younger because of how outraged I was when I discovered there was a sequel without Julia Stiles in it. And now years later, I find out there's 3 sequels total. Ridiculous. Anyway, I want to direct your attention to my nonprofit of choice this week in honor of Paige's pre-med degree, Doctors Without Borders. Doctors Without Borders offers medical humanitarian assistance to people based solely on need, irrespective of race, religion, gender, or political affiliation. Our teams of doctors, nurses, logisticians, and other frontline workers are often among the first on the scene when people's lives are upended by conflict, disease outbreaks, or natural or human-made disasters. The decision to respond is based solely on our independent assessment of medical needs. We work to ensure that our teams can reach people in need without restriction and provide aid directly. As always, the link to learn more will be in the description below. I'm going to wrap this up here. Any questions, suggestions, or insults, please leave them in the comment section below. Please at least try to be kind. I'm a little sensitive. Bye.